Hello everybody, UFC Wildcat here.
And I'm Powder Blue Bolts.
And this week we're going to be talking about the Buffalo Wild Wings Bowl between the TCU Horned Frogs and the Michigan State Spartans.
Yeah, and this is going to be a pretty big defensive game. If you like defense, you're going to want to tune into this. Michigan State ranked 10th as far as points against, and TCU ranked 34th, but everyone knows that Gary Patterson can coach pretty good defensive players. And starting off with Michigan State, their quarterback, Andrew Maxwell, he's led the Spartans to a 6-6 record. Kind of a disappointing year if you're a Michigan State fan. They were supposed to have won the Big Ten, won the Rose Bowl, and had a lot of high hopes and aspirations after the 17-13 home opener against Boise State, where Le'Veon Bell just took over and everyone screamed Heisman after one game. But Andrew Maxwell's done a pretty good job. 2,500 yards, 13 touchdowns, but he does have 9 picks. But Michigan State's one of those teams that relies on their defense and likes to run the ball as opposed to pass. So, those kind of stats can be expected.
Yeah, and I think Andrew Maxwell, he's got big shoes to fill. Kirk Cousins, oh man, he was a 4-year starter, and this kid just was really, really good for the Michigan State Spartans last year. But I think, Andrew Maxwell came in, he was, hoping to lay on Le'Veon Bell, the really good halfback. But, there were times where Maxwell had to step up, and sometimes, it really hurt him because he definitely stared down a few receivers in some games, and it really cost him. But like I was saying, Le'Veon Bell is definitely the driving force to this offense. You want to hit up on him?
Yeah, Le'Veon Bell, if you've seen this guy play, he's a workhorse. He'll run you over. A lot of people think he's built for the NFL. And like I said, he had that great game, 210 yards rushing with 2 touchdowns against Boise State. And against Boise State, that's really, really good numbers. And he's had pretty consistent numbers throughout the year. He's had 3 games where he's gone over 200 yards, and then he's had a number of games where he's gone over 100 yards. And he's just been pretty consistent all year for this Michigan State offense. 1,600 yards on the year with 11 touchdowns. So those are really, really good stats. And he's really the leader of this offense.
Yeah, and the Michigan State defense is what's going to be really good. They've got 2 really good defensive backs, and Johnny Adams and Darquez Denard. They were both all Big Ten first team selections, and they're going to have to be on their P's and Q's because they're going to be facing a pretty average, I'd say, TCU offense, but definitely got to be on your feet when you're facing Trayvon Boykin, the TCU quarterback. He's a freshman, and he had to come fill in after Casey Paha got arrested and then suspended October 4th after leading TCU to a 4-0 record starting the season. So yeah, Trayvon Boykin is actually a really good halfback, and then they've got a good wide receiver who Boykin really loves, and Josh Boyce. He's got 800 yards and 7 touchdowns, and this dude's a speedster. You just chuck it up to him, and he'll run right under the ball and take it in. So that's something that they're going to have to look out for. But like we were saying before, Gary Patterson's a great defensive coach, and he's got a freshman who is an AP Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year after leading the conference with 17.5 tackles for a loss and 9 sacks. This guy's really good. His name's Devontae Fields. Look out for this guy because he's going to need to be big in trying to stop this Le'Veon Bell rushing attack and maybe even getting some pressure on Andrew Maxwell. So what do you think are going to be keys to the game? I know that Mike D'Antonio, he's a really good coach. He's had a kind of a rough year after losing Kirk Cousins and, losing a lot of big players on the offense and like Keyshawn Martin. So, what does he have to do to help, get his team to a bowl win and maybe some momentum going forward for Maxwell and his young team?
Yeah, with Michigan State's 6-6 record, yeah, they lost half their games, but they really could have won pretty much all their games with the exception of Notre Dame, which they lost 20-3. You look at their their loss against Ohio State, 17-16. Their loss against Iowa, 19-16 in double overtime. They only lost by 2 to Michigan, only lost by 4 to Nebraska, only lost by 3 to Northwestern. So really, they've played all these teams really, really close, but they just don't have that edge that it takes to win these big games. You got to rely on Le'Veon Bell to have an explosive game because if he's limited, then you're going to really, really struggle and have to rely on Andrew Maxwell. And he's shown his youth, and the fact that he really hasn't started a whole lot. This is his first year starting, so if you can get him in a situation where he's comfortable in the pocket, he can get time to throw the ball, and continue to be successful, then I think you can win if you're Michigan State.
Yeah, and I think that's what's I feel really bad for Michigan State because, again, yeah, another one of these teams who, they're one good quarterback away. Take Kirk Cousins away from the team last year, and I think they're kind of in the same position, kind of like some tough games. Yeah, like you said, besides Notre Dame, they're in every game, and I feel like I watched the Ohio State game. They had a couple bad things go their way, a couple fumbles and things. Kind of really hurt them, and even the Iowa game was just kind of like a blunder, because again, one of the things that hurts is if you focus on stopping Le'Veon Bell, then you have to force Andrew Maxwell to do something. And in the Iowa game, Le'Veon Bell, he had 140 yards, but you force the ball into Andrew Maxwell's hands, a young guy, and he's going to stare down some receivers, and they're going to lose some games. So I don't know. Andrew Maxwell is definitely the pivotal point of this game. He needs to play perfect football even against a very good 4-2-5 defense of TCU.
Yes, I do agree with that. And you take a look at the Ohio State and Michigan games for Le'Veon Bell. Both games he was pretty limited, held to 45 yards, no touchdowns versus Ohio State, and 68 yards, no touchdowns against Michigan. And they lost both those games. So, like I said, if TCU can force Michigan State to rely on Andrew Maxwell, then they can probably walk out of there with a win.
Yeah, and I think for TCU, what's going to be really pivotal is the defense is going to need to get stops. They're going to need to find ways to make Le'Veon Bell a non-factor. Like we just discussed, force the ball into Andrew Maxwell's hands, and maybe Devontae Fields can actually do something, get some pressure on Andrew Maxwell, force him to some mistakes like he has in games that he's lost. So I think the big thing, though, is Trayvon Boykin needs to have a game like he has had in the past. Like, he needs to play great football like he did against Texas Tech, where he almost led to a victory. Lead them to a win over who did they beat? They beat, I think it was West Virginia that they won by 49-48.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it was that game. They had a really close game, and they had to, or no, it was 39-38 because they went for two, a gutsy call.
Mm-hmm.
And again, they need to have a game like that where they're toe to toe with them. Or at least Trayvon Boykin is, because this offense is not really good. They're kind of middle of the pack, 55th passing, 65th in rushing, 61st in points for. So, yeah, this offense isn't really that good. And again, like we said, it's going to be a defensive battle. And, going against the number 10 scoring defense, it's kind of scary. So, yeah, Trayvon Boykin needs to have a game, but at the same time, the TCU defense needs to be able to stop Le'Veon Bell. That's going to be the big key to the game. What's your prediction for the game?
I predict that Michigan State's going to play solid defense. William Golson's going to be in the backfield a lot, and have the freshman Boykin kind of uncomfortable, shaking in his boots a little bit, and he's going to make mistakes. So I think if Michigan State can create turnovers with that good defense that they have, they can walk out of there with a win. It's going to be a pretty low-scoring game. I'm going to say 21-14 Michigan State.
I like that. All right. I think, kind of along the same lines, I think Michigan State's a really good team. Le'Veon Bell, they have Michigan State has that one offensive player that can drive the team. For TCU, they have Trayvon Boykin and they have Josh Boyce, but those aren't really two pivotal people. So it kind of scares me a little bit that the offense is going to get going against this really, really good defense. You look at Texas, they can only put up 20 points, but hey, that was enough holding Texas at 13 points. They could only score 10 against Kansas State, who had a really good defense. So if I'm trying to pinpoint it to another game, I think Michigan State's defense is going to shut down TCU, and I think Michigan State wins this game 24-10.
All right, guys, it's been a good one, and be sure to tune in next week for the Franklin American Mortgage Music City Bowl, featuring the NC State Wolfpack and the Vanderbilt Commodores.
Remember to leave us a like, comment about what you think is going to happen in the game, and drop us a subscribe. We got more bowl games coming out to you. We're about to get to the BCS bowls and some of the bigger bowls like the Chick-fil-A Bowl, the Cotton Bowl, the Outback Bowl, some of those bigger games.
Bowl. That's going to be a good time.
It's going to be a good time. This is UFC Wildcat and Powder Blue Bullets signing out.